All right, here we are. Welcome to another Thursday night meditation class. I'm going to give you guys a opportunity to bring up a topic, what you want to talk about. Otherwise, we just go to what I want to talk about. So, yes, sir, Mr. Ahles, unmute yourself, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm working on this mindfulness lesson 8 right now, and it's about like the quotes that you like the best or stories. And one of the quotes I like is from Seneca, one of the old Stoics, and he says, um, "Until we go without, you don't realize that you didn't need those things to begin with." That's kind of the gist of it. So, what do you think when it comes to like fasting, whether it's you know food or like things that for Lent, you said you were Catholic, you were brought up Catholic, like fasting, giving up things that you enjoy for a, I guess, higher purpose?
Did you read my book?
Yes.
Do you remember Siddartha's secret?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so in there, I wrote a few lines of my interpretation of Siddhartha, probably the most important. And there's a lot in that book, Siddhartha. That's a great book. But his experiences in life and getting from the physical world into the more spiritual understanding. And Siddhartha's secret, as I pulled it, and I don't think this is an accident from the writer, and he kept saying through different challenges that he has this ability to think. Like I can think, I can figure things out. I think it's a huge missing ingredient today. People's ability to critically think rather than just believe whatever they're told. Um, it's much easier to manipulate people when they don't think, right? So critical thinking is something that should be the most essential skill taught in school, not memorizing things that you never, think about how many times you took a test back in grade school and remembered even the next day what the material was. I mean, that's not learning. That's a total farce. People should be able to actually have to figure things out. Kids read today, they don't even know half the words they're reading. Every single word should be understood. That way they're learning something. And then they should be asked, well, what do you think about this? And also ways to be creative and figure things out. You've got to be able to have critical thinking, or it's very difficult to have much control in your life at all. Then the second one was his ability to wait. He says, I can wait. And waiting is patience. People are in such a hurry. I think of years ago, peanut butter and jelly ended up in the same jar. It's like we got to this thing where we have to, Amazon, it's like you can practically have it delivered yesterday. I once ordered something and it was delivered that afternoon. It's like, how is that even possible? But we don't want to wait for anything. So waiting, patience, is a virtue and it's a skill. So your ability to, well, it's something I teach the kids. What is patience? And it's like very simple. It takes how long it takes. And when we say it takes how long it takes, it reminds me of children in a car when you're driving hours to wherever, some trip with the family, and everybody's like, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? When are we going to get there?" And it's not like telling them anything is going to help you get there any faster. So you start just telling them, "We'll get there when we get there." It's like just do what you're doing where you're doing it, and stop trying to be there sooner. Be here now. Make that a habit. And so being here now is like observing the moment and not always trying to be somewhere in the future. We spend so much time in the past, guilty about things we've done maybe, and the future worrying what might happen. If you spend more time in the moment and just let things be, and they come when they come, this is a skill, and life can be much more peaceful. So the ability to think, the ability to wait, and then why am I talking about this now? because you asked about fasting, and that was the third one. I can fast. This is very powerful. The ability to fast goes along with, well, let me say it this way because it was just a few weeks ago somebody asked me about the law of attraction. You see, Siddartha's secret is also the law of attraction. Because number one, you have to think, what do you really want? You need clarity. You can't be like here, over here, over here. You can't keep changing. I want this, and the next day I want that. The universe has no idea what you're doing. Clear. This is what I want. Very clear. I think, I can think, I get what I want. Bam, I focus on getting there. And then I'm patient. No big hurry, no big stress. And then the fasting is not being needy, not coming from a place of lack, not thinking. It kind of goes along with patience a little bit, but it's more about not being needy, not just being the instant gratification. It's also, it's strengthening the ability to wait and straight out just, oh, what's the word I'm thinking? It's like, see, fasting with food is usually people think. So you think you need to eat every few hours. And a lot of that came from the food industry, actually, anywhere from 3 to 6 meals a day. And it's just not true. When you eat properly, it's completely different. People get so irritable, just like you're lacking a cigarette. People smoke and then they lack nicotine, and then they get irritable. People can actually get in fights, yelling at each other, arguing everything because they get in this terrible mood. Well, people get like that with food, right? When they're lacking the food. So fasting is a lot harder on a bad diet. And a bad diet is one where if I was going to make a fire and all I have is little tiny twigs, then I'm never going to be able to relax in front of that fire. It's going to light up and it's going to go out. It's going to light up, it's going to go out. I need some bigger logs. And so protein and fats. You get energy from fats. You get energy from carbohydrates. You get energy from fats. Carbohydrates are like the little sticks, and the fats are like the big log. So this idea like I have to eat all the time can also be a bit of ADD. So one is like you're hungry because you're burning these little sticks. You're living on sugar. And then two is like boredom. It's just like every time you have nothing to do, you want something to munch on. It's like, what do I do about snacks? I get that a lot from people when I teach how to eat. It's like, well, what do I do about snacks? Well, what do you need a snack for? If your body is getting what it needs, you don't need to be chewing on something all the time. In fact, your whole digestive system is going to do a lot better if it's not constantly working. And so nutrient-dense food with the right amount of proteins and fats, I mean, you can go 4, 5, 6 hours without even thinking about eating because your body's satisfied. So something I knew years ago, and I believe most people think this way. You think you have to eat because your stomach's growling, right? Or your stomach's empty. You figure that's why you have to eat. Your stomach's empty. And when your stomach's full, then you've gotten what you need, and it doesn't matter what that food is. And nothing could be further from the truth. You get hungry simply because your body, your cells at the cellular level are lacking nutrients. They're lacking something. And so the signal goes from the brain to eat something. But the problem is if you're constantly eating empty foods, then your body's going to constantly be hungry. The empty foods are not giving the cells what they need, so it doesn't matter if the stomach's this big and it's full, you'll keep eating more. It's like, when you eat a whole pizza, it's like stretching and stretching and stretching your stomach. And then they got these big gulps. How to get all that liquid in them, I don't know. But it's just like more and more volume to the point where you need a gastric bypass. It's like cutting part of your stomach off in order to lose the weight. And it's just like, What the heck? If you get the nutrients you need, you're going to automatically eat less. You'll never have a problem with weight. You're going to feel a lot better, and you don't need to eat constantly. So fasting, when you're eating poorly, can be really hard. You think about someone who has, they may not be diabetic, but they're kind of, close to that borderline. And so they end up with this sugar crash. Well, why, in my experience, can I go all day long, never have a sugar crash, never feel irritable because I'm hungry? I can just keep going. It's an interesting thing. But I have decades of eating properly and realize I can fast twice a week if I want, and it's not even a struggle. Whereas you try to tell someone, 24 hours to fast, and it's just like in the lessons, you try to you try 24 hours fast, it's like torture. I once sat in the woods in a hole, in a 10-foot circle. It was a vision quest I did with Tom Brown Jr. Actually, it was a student of his, Malcolm. But anyway, he would lead groups of people. You find your spot in the woods, and there's nobody else around. You're like, they're out there, but you don't know where they are. There's no communication. You are completely alone. And the vision quest is 4 days. And so you're by yourself in the woods for 4 days and 4 nights, and you're just, all you have is water. I mean, there are vision quests with not even water, but then you're going to hallucinate. And that's one thing I definitely learned, that when I didn't drink enough water, I started to hallucinate. So I guess the old Native Americans, that was part of the training, to actually learn from the hallucination. But it's not the best thing to go too long without water. So anyway, we did have water. So finally on the 4th day it was completed. I think you had to get to the morning. Yeah, you had to get to the morning. And we started walking back, and everybody's like, I can't wait to get to the meal. And I said, no, my teacher once said he fasted for 5 days, so I did an extra day. It wasn't hard. It's like, it's so much of a mental trip. It's like, especially if your body has what it needs, it can go without so much struggle. So it goes back to my whole point with Siddartha's secret. It's not being needy. Like, oh my God, when am I going to get my next meal? Do you realize people have gone over a month without food? And as far as I know, they're human, I'm human, you're all human. We can all do that. We're all capable. You'll be basically skin and bones at the end because your body will feed on itself. And I'm not saying it's healthy. I'm saying what we're capable of. And so fasting also makes us tougher. You're not stressed about what you don't have. You can go without. And that's the benefit and the key in the learning, the experience of, I can go without. And so, modern times, if things keep turning worse, if you know you can fast, it won't be as traumatic. The trauma, you can find your way. And I've said many times in these talks that you should learn a bit about basic survival. What do you really need to survive? Because what if your heat goes out in the winter? What are you going to do? Lots of layers. Lots of layers, very thick. And your body heat will reflect, and you'll keep yourself warm. Lots of layers. Because literally, if you're outside, it's a matter of how thick you can lay the leaves, to what temperature you can handle in there. Just like animals who nest. They bury themselves, they burrow in so that their body heat reflects and they keep themselves warm. But the average person won't know what to do. And in a situation like that, if power went out and you didn't have heat, those are the people that are going to be traumatized, and they're not going to make it. So yeah, I believe in fasting for much more than health reasons. I believe it for strengthening the will and the resolve Mind. You have a stronger mind. When you're desperate, things can go bad fast. When you're calm, you can figure things out. Yes, Miss Beaumont, you got yourself together over there. Great. Unmute. You have to unmute. You see, I clicked it for you.
There. So I went on a fast once because of my digestive system, and I had to have colonoscopies all the time, and they were very irritating to my system. So there was a place called the Fasting Center, and you would make a broth out of 5 vegetables, and then you'd take away the vegetable part and just have the broth, no fiber, and you would drink water and tea, and you do that periodically during the day. And I did that for actually almost 20 days, transitioning in and out. And what I found was not only did I didn't feel hungry because there was nothing to digest and leave and get that hungry feeling, but I also found that I didn't get uptight. I didn't get uptight about things. And my energy level wasn't high, but it wasn't low. It was consistent the whole time. And I didn't react to things that I used to react to. So it was very interesting, and it was a better prep for a colonoscopy than the traditional way.
Can't disagree with that. Yeah, that's and your experience tells the truth, you know, especially for you. I will say this though. I don't like to be very what's the word, controversial here, but going back to what the proper diet is, when you have the strength, so there's a lot of toxins we eat, and that concept is about detoxing and making it easier for your digestion. But the problem is, why is your digestion so weak? And I'm not talking to you, I'm talking in general, person with digestive problems, okay? Because
Yeah.
I know your history and I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
I want to talk about people in general. They do all these diets with food combining, only eating this kind, and then only eating this kind, and only eating this kind. You know, they can go through a list of 100 foods and end up only eating like 3 of them, being able to eat 3 of them. Eventually get weaker and weaker. And I'm exaggerating a little bit there, but it's just the point of the treatment is on the wrong end. It's from the wrong direction. And this is nothing negative about what your experience was. I'm really not even referring to that. I'm talking more the general approach to dietary problems. Because I just had a very person with really a lot of problems. I mean, unbelievable problems, like 100 times a day. They can't even relax because there's a reflux coming up 100 times a day. It was a constant reflux, and the belly is out like they're pregnant all the time. It was incredible. And this person's going on and on about what's wrong and all the details and all the things they've tried and the doctors and what they, and I just said, I literally in the consult just said stop. And that's what I want to get to now. There's a reason why you're having such a problem with digestion. And picking and finding every little irritating food and eliminating that is completely unrealistic. You could have real allergies to something like the people have with peanuts, and that's really because vaccinations were made in peanuts, so then that became a toxin for the body later. There's a lot of things like that going on with affecting people's health. But number one with digestive problems is stress. If you're living in fight or flight, your body turns off digestion. In other words, fight or flight is survival. You know, this is sitting in a Middle East neighborhood with bombs around you all the time. You know, it's just, how could you settle? How can you eat and digest? Your body don't care about digesting. It needs to run or fight for its life. Think about that. So your body turns off. You're not going to be hungry, and you're not going to have sexual desire. Because why? How are you going to reproduce? You can't take care of your offspring in this sort of environment. And so if we have in the Western society this constant low-level fight or flight, then you're going to have lots and lots of digestive problems. And over the years, what's happening is food is going undigested. It's creating the gas that's coming up, and it's burning all the mucous membrane, all the surface area, all the way through with rotting. And so this constant inflammation being created is going to damage diverticulosis, diverticulitis, Crohn's, irritable bowel is sort of a umbrella phrase. You can label it any way you want, and that's why I just said stop. We need to address the most basic part, and that's learning how to calm down. Learning how to chew your food better, learning how to calm down when you're eating, learning how to calm down in your life, create a less stressful environment. And yes, I give herbal formulas that can also help the stomach to start to digest again, to reactivate all these things. In 1 week, this person was better after years of fighting this. So they came to me with all of this information, and I just cut it. Stop. I don't need to know all that. And there was a teacher I learned from many years ago, because I would always like to be a bit of the devil's advocate in a class, like challenge them from a bit of a Western perspective or point of view, really because I wanted to understand it, not because I didn't believe them. And so I'd ask them some challenging questions. And the one teacher was so smart. He said, stop chasing the cells. Stop chasing the cells. Isn't that exactly what Western medicine does? It keeps trying to break things down to a smaller component and then blaming that for the, like that's the problem. When really it's the holistic body that can correct most anything. So really what I'm doing in the clinic is getting people's bodies to work right. I get your body to work right, it heals itself. Your body is so brilliant, it just needs to have function restored, is the best way I can say it. If it's functioning properly, it fixes itself and it doesn't have problems. I mean, my own family, animals we've had, if you think about what people feed their dogs. You know what a dog is? Dogs and cats are carnivores. Dogs and cats would catch an animal and eat it raw. That's what they actually need to live on. And I never have any veterinarian bills. Our animals never get sick. So it's just applying natural laws. Our bodies are the same. We are naturally hunter-gatherers. You can argue all you want, but we either fished or hunted and gathered. And that was it. You have to go back far enough to how we evolved. The animals that we keep, they need to eat what they eat, period. I have an iguana. All he gets is organic vegetables. If I'm going to have the animal, then I have to be able to afford the food that he needs, or I shouldn't have that animal, because otherwise there will be problems. And so he's in optimal health. It's never have any problems. It's amazing. And it's a big mix of all the different leafy greens, dark leafy greens. You think about the dry food or the canned food that people feed the dogs and the cats. Are you kidding me? You think about, I don't know your animals, or I know family members, their dogs get fat just like people. Middle age, they're fat. And then they start having kidney problems and liver problems, and they got $1,000 veterinarian bills, $2,000 veterinarian bills, and they get cancer and tumors just like people if you're not feeding them properly. You feed them properly, those animals will have no problem whatsoever. And this is one of the biggest misnomers in this world, is this thinking we need so much help. No, we just need natural laws. If you understand natural laws, then the body gets what it needs. The body will function properly. It can take care of itself. It can stay healthy, including in spite of all this stuff that we're dealing with today. I keep saying, anything that I said from day one, way in the beginning, all I've seen is confirmation of it since. Nothing's proved me wrong. And I'm not saying I'm so brilliant. I'm saying I had amazing teachers. They led me in the right direction. I continued to research. I continued to learn. And I continued to pay attention to what I experienced, not listening without critical thinking to what anybody else says. If something doesn't make sense, using natural laws, natural principles as a litmus test, then I know how to question it, and then I know how to dig deeper, and I will find out many times the most brilliant people think in the world, they're just wrong. They're just wrong. And I've had some interesting conversations with some high-level people that it blows them away because they never think the natural way. So anyway, enough said about that. Bagua Zhang, I always fall back on this. Bagua Zhang is a Taoist art. And when we say Taoist, we're referring to nature. We're referring to natural laws. So the body and the mind, how you sleep, how you eat, how you move, this is all Bagua Zhang, but Bagua Zhang is a martial art too, teaching you how to defend yourself physically, but also in a health way. And that's a unique part that's different with Chinese martial arts and a lot of others. The traditional martial arts included mind work, included health work, health exercises. Because if you're not mentally stable, you're not emotionally stable, if you're weak and sick, how could you possibly defend yourself physically? So they go together, really. But a lot of people in martial arts just focus on the fighting. Another question. Yes, sir.
Well, Seafood, just based on what you just said, that you follow Taoism for the Bagua. What about the martial arts that study Okinawan karate? Is that Shintoism? Because you don't discuss Confucianism at all, really. How does all that play in all these Asian martial arts with the Filipino stick fighting? Do they follow any type of philosophy? Or is this everything fall under the Tao, or is it?
Okay, the East Asian martial arts all do. Zen Buddhism, big part of it. So Okinawan karate, the Japanese systems, this is where the term dojo comes from. So people are more familiar with the term dojo than dojang or daojang. You know, in China, they would even just say guan. It's like it's like a training hall, but dojo tells you everything you need to know about the answer to your question. Do is actually Tao. The character is Tao. So do, when you hear karate do, it's do being the way. The way is more, is not so general. It's like, oh, your way, your opinion, no. Tao is nature. So the natural way, getting you more connected to all that is, ultimately is the goal. So the dojo, the dojang, Dao Chang, however you want to say it, because they all have their different dialects, but it's the same characters, so it's the same words. Means the place of enlightenment, literally. The place of enlightenment. Why would the martial arts training hall be known as the place of enlightenment? Think about that. One of the greatest ways that I know to raise your consciousness is to be in a real life or death situation. And martial arts recreates that. It's like a threat to this physical body will raise the consciousness, because you're not going to be worrying about your relationships or paying your bills, you know, your mortgage or the shopping you have to do later when someone's about to take your head off. There is nothing else but this moment right here to protect my life. And so it changes your mind. You light up to pay attention to this moment. It's like the rock climber hanging by his fingers. It's like there's nothing else but trying to hold on to that. He's not worrying about anything from his life at that moment. So it forces you into the here and now. And in the here and now, you connect to all that is. You can experience eternity. See, that word, you think about eternity going into the future, but it's always now. Anytime you experience is now. You can't experience tomorrow and you can't experience yesterday. Yesterday's gone. When you were there, it was now. When you get to tomorrow, it's today, it's now. So that's eternity. And so the martial arts training, where you actually get to where you have that physical threat, where someone could hurt you, you are in a different state of mind. It trains and raises the consciousness. And that's why I have such a passion for it. Because I know what it can do to a life. It can completely change a life. It can get you back to what you're supposed to be. You can discover who you really are. You can overcome limitations that you think you have. Because our limitations, for the most part, are based on programming, from our life, what you've been told you can or can't do, what you're good at, what you're not good at. You tell your parents what you love, and then they tell you that's stupid, and then you say, oh, okay, that's stupid, then I don't want to do that. But that's your passion. Why don't you pursue it? See, to me, that's what martial arts does. It teaches the person to find their true selves. And if we find our true selves, we can actually be happy in this world. And yes, there are times when, and especially historically, when really bad things have happened. I mean, really bad things are happening in the world today. Do you have what it takes to face that? The more you've trained yourself, the more likely the answer is yes. And that doesn't mean you become, a 300-pound lineman for the Ravens or something, football. I mean, that you can overcome everything with your physical. No, what if you're a 100-pound woman? How are you going to deal with things? There still has to be that inner toughness, that will, that strength, that in the moment understanding, rather than just bowing down and accepting whatever comes. Because you can accept to a point, but you also can fight. And there's ways to fight that it takes this inner strength to be willing to do that. And martial arts is supposed to develop that kind of a person. Historically, in East Asia, it was the martial artists who always stood up against, let's say, the bad guys. The people who did harm, ran things wrong, etc., etc. They stood up because they trained in a way to develop courage, bravery, ability to think. The ability to think is, again, raising the consciousness so you have more clarity, because remember, what are we here for tonight? Meditation is the foundation. The foundation being getting away from all the noise so you have clarity in your thinking. See, if your thinking is too influenced by outside things and you're completely unaware of that, how much free will do you really have? We've had that discussion many times over the years about, do we have free will? I don't believe people do. Most people do. I mean, I've even heard of studies that show before you even have a thought, the signal already happened from somewhere else. It's like from the other side or something, a spiritual side already made your decision for you. And then you think you made that decision. But then there's also very powerful conditioning, programming, that it's like, think about what gets you upset. Maybe it's a family member who really can push your buttons. Maybe you live a good life, but then you get together with your family and there's a certain, could be a sibling, a parent, Everything's fine until you get in front of them, and then they have whatever they say, and it just gets your blood boiling again. It's like, well, why is that? How much free will do you have if that other person can control your emotions so deeply? How many decisions are made that are actually coming from clarity rather than from programming too? Most programming is it's in the subconscious where you're not aware of it. And so you're doing things from your subconscious with complete unawareness. I said that recently too. How do you know what your subconscious is? And that's why that parent maybe, as you're an adult now, your 40s, 50s, and the parent still can push your buttons with just the way they talk to you. And it's like, well, how do you know what's in your subconscious? How you feel when they talk to you. That's a subconscious programming. You don't have control of that until you clear it, which is interesting. I learned years ago, Scientology. Scientology has this whole process they do with clearing. And I had this deep conversation with this group that were Scientologists. And it's interesting because L. Ron Hubbard basically came up with everything we're doing in martial arts. And did he train martial arts, study Eastern philosophy? Yeah, I think he did. I don't think he made it all up. So he's the creator of Scientology, and then they're telling me all their methods and everything, and it's like, and they charge a lot of money to go through these methods. And every one of their methods was like in our practice, as far as, especially because of meditation. Because meditation done right will clear you. Done right. What is that? People don't believe you can turn off the mind, and it is very difficult. But if you practice enough, you get that focal point, and then you shift into awareness and eventually this empty mind. You can experience, well, beyond this physical, for one. You can, okay, so sometimes, and this is important as a teacher of meditation, I've seen people in tests go into like a vibration. I've seen people burst out into tears. A lot of times they control themselves because we're in a group and they don't want to expose that. It's a fear of letting that out. But when you really meditate, deep stuff, deep parts of your being will open and release. It's like a trap door. And all this bad stuff can come up and can come out. You can relive something that you experienced at 8 years old, for example, and go through the whole emotional trauma. And this can create a clearing where you realize how that was holding you back and making decisions for you that you weren't conscious of. But when it comes out like that, it's not like it's going to happen every time, but there may be other things you have to experience too. So meditation, some have said, can be dangerous. Well, I think if you don't have the right guidance, there can be some danger there. I think there can be a danger to a relationship, maybe a marriage. Maybe you realize you never should have married that person. It's possible. You find yourself and realize I made a mistake. I wasn't who I really am when I made that decision. Or vice versa. A bad marriage can become great because you have this realization why the issues you have with them. And that clears. So it doesn't have to be a negative, but that can be looked at as dangerous if it causes a divorce. But in reality, how long do you want to live suffering because you don't really know yourself? You see, so that's where it can be dangerous. It can also make you lazy. So let's say done wrong, and especially when you don't have grounding, there's another benefit to martial arts. Real martial arts, with meditation as the foundation, builds the physical body. So it's like, how high can you reach? You think of a tree, how big a tree and how high and how wide it goes is based on how deep and how wide the roots are. So if you're well grounded in the physical, you can become more spiritual. But if you're not well grounded in the physical, you're out of balance. You can become very flaky. You can become very cloudy minded, like foggy brain. And nutrition is a big part of that. Nutrition is a big part of that because your physical body, it's not grounded, it's weak. So now, oh, I don't feel like going to work today. I'm just going to lay around, look at the trees. That could be, that could make you homeless, right? Eventually, if you keep acting like that, or you tell somebody I'm going to meet you somewhere and you just don't show up, and it's like, oh, I forgot. What's the problem? No big deal. So it can destroy relationships. It can destroy your income. It can, you can lose everything with that flaky, foggy brain. And so that's where it could be looked at as dangerous. But let's turn that coin over just a moment. A lot of that is also based on this materialistic society we live in, right? Because what do monks do? This is their calling. They may say a mantra all day long. They may sleep 2 hours and meditate, 20 or 18 hours, eat just a little bit and just meditate and commune with God. And is that wrong? You might say they're flaky. You have to say to each his own. If that's what your passion is, then is it wrong? So that kind of went all over the place because we're all different people. What's right and what's wrong? Anyway, the question was how much free will we really have to, right? If you realize the most important thing is to commune with God, go for it. I think too many people make money and maybe sex, right? That kind of thing is the most important thing. And if you notice, there's never enough money, and for people that are constantly pursuing, sex with different kind of people, there's never enough. Never really satisfies. Always something. Oh, let me have that. Let me have that. Let me get that. Let me get that. More and more and more. And so that is a revealing. Because what's truly satisfying in life? We need God. We need the source, the connection to the divine. You can call it whatever you're comfortable with. I'm not worried about what your calling is. What I'm saying is we are that. So thinking we're not, separating from that, it's the original sin. And it's very difficult, if not impossible, to have real inner peace with that kind of pursuit in your whole life. That's what matters most. The material things, the money, the sex, whatever, the physical. You think about the person who spends all their time, they're dieting all the time because they want to stay skinny, or they're in the gym all the time because they want to look good on the beach. And it's like, age catches up to everybody. So if that's all that's important to you, well, that's going to be quite a loss when you can't keep it up anymore. Or God forbid you ever have an accident and you can't go to the gym, or you get sick or something with cancer. Because I know a lot of people who were like that young, and as they got older, they're very sick. Usually because they depleted themselves too much. And it's like trying to keep up with this facade actually destroyed their true health. Beginning of this, I talked about stress and digestion, right? The fasting we talked about a little bit. So you think about your ability to to stay healthy, really healthy, number one has to be not just controlling stress, but changing your expectations so that you feel differently about things. That's a big step. In other words, never being happy where you are and always striving and wanting and like wanting to change your husband or wife, wanting to change your boyfriend or girlfriend, wanting to change your kids, like if they're the problem, blaming. Change your expectations is it's like things aren't going to be what you want them to be. You need to accept them as they are. And all of a sudden, all this stress can just drop because you're stopped trying to change everything around you, and instead you're released inside to accept what is. That doesn't mean don't fight for what's right. It just means don't let it run you so it makes you sick. It doesn't have to be emotional. Your actions can be logical, the right thing to do, but it doesn't have to make you sick inside where you can't even function or think straight. The things I see and hear people talk to each other, how they wish death on people that they don't even know because they don't agree with something, that their politics or something. It's really something. It's mind-blowing that a human being can talk about another human being that way. This to me is so far from the divine. They've fallen so far that I don't know how they can be saved unless they suddenly wake up and realize what they've been doing. Because there is no way to wish ill will on anyone and have any sort of connection to God. You're lying to yourself and fooling yourself. We went long, so let's go to meditation.